Okay.
So he's getting these revelations, and then he wants to publish them. And some people resist publishing the revelations. They're not so sure that they should, and mostly because they know it's a different quality than the Book of Mormon. The Book of Mormon's strict, the stone, and it's a translation of prophets. But is Joseph Smith a prophet? Right? And
so that's actually a question in the early days.
Yeah, is he on the same level? He's a translator, right?
Wow.
Remember that one revelation, one of the early revelations given in March of 1829, says that he should pretend to no other gift than to translate the Book of Mormon.
I want to open that up and show that to the audience, but I want to first understand what are all these revelations, right? So I think that's really fascinating. Okay, so they're writing these things down as he's revealing them. How do they get published? Like, are they originally published in the newspaper or something, or
no?
In a
So
periodical?
They're going to publish it in a book form, and they are publishing some of them in the newspaper. A Mormon periodical called The Evening and the Morning Star, published in Independence, Missouri.
Wow.
In 1831.
Okay.
Well, and they're trying to fulfill the word of the Lord shall come out of Zion, out of Jerusalem.
And Zion, for the new Zion is Independence, Missouri. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that's what they're trying to do. And so they published some of these revelations. And now they decide they need a rule to judge people by. They're having problems with people not obeying the commandments, not listening to the revelations, and so they need to have a rule, a way of judging people, and they need to publish this so that there's an expectation on everybody this is what is expected, And some balk at that. They're not so sure that should be done. They resist, but Joseph Smith overcomes it by challenging them to produce a revelation equal to the least, what they consider the least of these revelations.
Wow.
If you can't do it, you got to endorse it.
Okay, we have to stop there for a second. So in Joseph Smith's lifetime, there were people who tried to disparage him by comparing him to Muhammad.
Yeah.
I want to make a comparison to Muhammad, but not to disparage him, just as two phenomena of history.
Yeah.
The Quran itself has a doctrine called Inimitability, which I'm sure I'm mispronouncing, which is this idea that you are not capable of producing a single surah. In Islam, the miracle of Islam, they say Jesus and Moses, perform miracles, healing in Jesus and Moses splitting the sea. The miracle of Muhammad is the Quran itself. And the proof of it, that it's a miracle is you can't produce even a single chapter of the Quran. And that's in the Quran itself. It's the doctrine of inimitability.
I'm aware of that.
And so they have this idea that that it's the greatest of all poetry ever written. I'm not a judge of poetry, so I don't know. And of course the response to that by non-Muslims is to say, well, I can't produce a single sonnet of Shakespeare either, because Shakespeare wrote those, right? I can't write a single play of Shakespeare. It doesn't mean Shakespeare had revelations from God. But it's incredible to me that early Mormonism, and Mormonism maybe even today, has the same doctrine.
Yeah.
Let's see you produce a single revelation the way that Joseph Smith has. And then here's the other analogy to Muhammad. So in Islam, there's this doctrine that Muhammad was illiterate. And therefore you can't say he was imitating something he read somewhere, because he actually couldn't even read and he had no education. So how did he write such amazing poetry? That's part of the miracle. And it's almost verbatim in some cases. I'm exaggerating, not verbatim, but it's uncanny, the parallels where they describe Joseph Smith, I think rightfully so, as uneducated and crass. And his wife, or his mother says he couldn't even, I think it's his wife, after he dies, Says he couldn't even dictate a letter. How could he have dictated the Book of Mormon? He couldn't even dictate a personal letter. Am I right about that? Is there something there where okay?
She said that.
So talk to me about these parallels. And I know you're not an expert on Islam, but am I wrong? Is something here like in the parallels as different phenomena and completely different periods of history? And I can't believe for a second that somebody in Joseph Smith's time was sitting down and reading Islamic theology and saying, "Hey, we should steal that one, right? We should claim inimitability." No, but I think they're two independent outgrowths of different situations. That's my view. What talk to me about that?
Yeah, how do you respond to the challenge, and why are they're challenging him? Because they listen to him every day. They know the revelations sound like him, right. Somewhat. But in a biblical biblical style.
Would you say that the revelations he had? Sorry, go ahead.
So they knew what he sounded like, and they knew that the revelations, even though there's some moments where they're very, the language is very eloquent.
Mm-hmm.
You could still hear Joseph's voice. So that's the question. Do the prophets speaking God just dictate God's words? Or does God use them to speak through, and their different personalities show up?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So they saw the weakness. And one of his revelations says that God speaks to man in his own weakness.
What does that mean?
Through his own understanding. So it's saying, these revelations are saying that God is speaking through Joseph Smith, not Joseph Smith dictating God's words that he perceives or hears, and he's just repeating them. So it's not literal. Joseph Smith is right away. So I've always contended that Joseph Smith put out to the people that he's just dictating God's words, or that he's dictating the words on the stone. Privately, he has a different definition of revelation that is more liberal, more nuanced than what he let out, that is less faith promoting, So when he challenges his followers to imitate God's words, he knows they're not going to be able to do that. Even if they all can write better than him. They're all, the people challenging him are more learned than he is, and can use written language.
Particularly Sidney Rigdon is truly a talented orator, right? And writer.
Yeah, in the style that people would expect in the 19th century.
Mm-hmm.
Nowadays, we'd probably be all rolling our eyes.
In contrast to Joseph Smith, who famously in the Book of Mormon, instead of in those days, he's dictating in them days.
Yeah.
Right? So that's clearly his, and I shouldn't say clearly because Royal Scousen might disagree with me. But to me, it's clear that this is him expressing things in the dialect of English that he knows. Mm-hmm. I mean, I guess you can make a bunch of arguments about it, but it seems to me that's the case, and it seems to, I think most people that's the case, right? I mean, most non-Mormons.
So I would argue that when he's in the spirit, he probably feels that he dictates better than he normally can talk. Mm-hmm. And he gets into a mode of speech that he doesn't write in his letters. Writing a letter that Emma mentions is totally different than speaking. Mm-hmm. Okay. So Joseph Smith is very good at language, spoken language. Even in the Book of Mormon, the writers in the Book of Mormon complain that they're not good writers, that they're better. If they were there in person speaking, you would feel the spirit. It would be much better.
Interesting.
So he's letting his own, weakness show. But he's a charismatic leader. He already has confidence that he can get people to do what he needs to be done. And he knows that he can speak. He knows he can't write that well, right?
So he's having these he's having these revelations. They're collecting them, and then when do they first? And they're initially publishing them in the periodical, the newspaper, but then they have something called the Book of Commandments, right?
Okay, so just to finish my earlier thought before we move on, is that he knows that these guys are not going to pretend to speak in God's voice. It's too frightening for them to even attempt it.
Okay.
He knows they're not going to do it. Okay. And he has confidence that he can dictate things like the Book of Mormon, like his revelations, and pseudepigraphical writing. He can imitate pseudepigraphical writing written by pretending to be a prophet.
Right.
He can do that. He has confidence. That's why he's doing it. And he's not the only one. There's lots of people in his environment writing revelations. There's Mormons that later go on, like Sidney Rigdon himself, to dictate revelations. There's a 16-year-old boy in Kirtland, Ohio, that dictates a whole book that sounds a lot like Isaiah wrote it.
So you say on the one hand he knows, like here's what it sounds to me like you're saying. He knows he's willing to pretend to be God's voice, but he knows they're not willing to do that.
No, he in my interpretation, he believes he is inspired.
Oh, okay. So he
is inspired, but it's coming through him. He knows it's coming through him.
So this is what you call the pious fraud.
Yeah.